by yourself. Welcome to Courageous Parenting, transforming challenges into opportunities. Hi, I'm Edith Wolek. I am a leadership coach, transformational leadership coach, and Amazon best-selling book author. And we have here an amazing speaker, Dawneese Openshaw. Welcome, Dawneese.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Welcome, Dawneese. And our vision is to empower parents and children by building connection with love. Hi, I am Filza Jabin, parent of three beautiful children, transformational teen, and parents leadership coach. Let me introduce you all to Dawneese. Dawneese Openshaw is an agent for change and is a master transformational leadership and relationship coach and trainer. Dawnee's passion for supporting others to grow has led to her opinion opening the door to the Global Leadership Academy. At the Academy, she and her team supports individuals to become the highest version of themselves, organizations to grow, and families to thrive. She has been married to her husband Scott for 29 years, and they are the parent of three amazing children. And today she is going to talk about surviving to thriving, how to regulate and co regulate emotions to create harmony versus chaos in your home. Welcome, Danielle. Such a
Thank-
beautiful topic.
So glad to be here. Yes, and I have three adult children. Yay, they made it to adulthood.
Okay.
And going to be a grandma here in a few months. So I'm so excited. So
Wow.
excited.
Congratulations on that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So tell us more about the topic which you have chosen and the work which you are doing. Tell our audience all about it.
All about it. Okay. So the beautiful thing, in talking about taking our families from surviving to thriving is really about that it's about emotional intelligence, and it's about learning to create that regulation within ourselves, and then also co-regulating with our children, particularly when our children are struggling to regulate for themselves. So all three of my children have been diagnosed with mood disorders. One of my children has over 10 different diagnoses. And she came to us, we adopted her at age 5. And so she had significant complex PTSD. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. We had no idea how to parent this sweet child, and have learned so much by experience. And so what I've learned, I want to share now with other parents so that you can create harmony within your home versus the constant chaos, especially for children who struggle regulating emotions now more than ever. I don't know if you've all noticed, but there's this thing that we all have that when we, even as adults, it's challenging to regulate sometimes because this beautiful device, whether it be this or an iPad or a computer, whatever, it is more accessible now than ever before. And we have certain chemistry that happens in our brain that this is really good for. It's dopamine. And the dopamine are the hits that are automatic. And when we create that constant dopamine, it's a feel good. But what happens when dopamine wears off? It's kind of like adrenaline, if you think about it. You have that adrenaline rush when something happens, and then when it wears off, you have this release or letdown. When we have constant dopamine hits, have any of you ever tried to take a device from your child when they are not willing to give it up? Have you experienced those? Yes, yes.
Definitely.
So because you're taking away that feel-good dopamine chemical that's happening, what we want to create as parents is actually we want to create the oxytocin. Oxytocin is generated and created when we have connection, when we're actually creating. I just got chills. I literally was just explaining this to my 20-year-old daughter while on family vacation this last week because the constant dopamine hit feels good, but it's that connection with another human being. It's the eye-to-eye contact. It's the physical touch that cannot be duplicated on an electronic device. So it's not just about the electronic device. What it is about is creating those opportunities for that oxytocin, because oxytocin is a long release chemical in our brain that now allows us for it to be happy for a longer period of time. Oxytocin is the scientific way to say building relationship, creating connection, and building that long-lasting relationship that we can still stay connected even when we may be in the chaos or in that survival mode. So I've been through a lot of surviving, and I will say that thriving is a much better place to be. All of that said, so yes, so many amazing things that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Definitely, most of families, or most, like, anyone actually in my circle, as I'm looking around, they are surviving. They are in survivor mode, and I don't see that many families that are thriving. So the purpose of this summit is to create that change, no matter what challenges we are faced with, whether it's a mental health illness, ADHD, or any like anxieties and depressions and things like that. So we get to support those parents who are struggling and surviving right now into thriving. So this is a perfect opportunity for them to lean into support and hearing yourself and other speakers speak about this. How can they create that? So speaking about our parents, how can they identify their own emotions and that are dysregulated, and how they are impacting their family dynamics? How can they look at themselves first?
Yes, great question. So really it's about getting a baseline. It's understanding and knowing your emotions. If you're not familiar with it, and I can share this with you ladies to also share out too, on a link, and this is the emotion wheel. And really we only have 6 true emotions, that all other emotions, or as we may say, feelings, stem from those. So it's getting really curious with ourselves what emotions we're actually feeling, and really identifying that. So have a baseline. Know what is it that what emotions am I feeling on a regular basis? Getting curious and asking myself, what are some of my big triggers? If you want to know what you actually value the most, you can do a value exercise or trigger exercise. So, for example, what triggered me a lot in being a parent, and still triggers, I mean, I wouldn't say trigger, there's an activation that happens. Now I'm in a much different emotional space, so I handle it and navigate it a lot differently than I used to. Before, when my daughter would lie, or any child would lie to me, that was a huge, like, whoa, sirens, alarms, emotions in my body, all the nervous system just raw, on fire. And lying just, oh, it just really set me off. And so what I learned about that is that it wasn't about my child, right? It was about me. It was about what was coming up for me in that moment. And that I felt, for me, I felt there was a threat to my nervous system. And so all the alarms and whistles and everything were going off. So the beauty of knowing that is that what I learned is that I value honesty and integrity. It's one of my core life values. So again, I could go through a value list and do the exercise of what are my core values, or I can just get really intimate with what triggers me, what activates inside of me, something stirs something that feels uncomfortable. And then I can go contrary to that and know why. Why? Because when someone lies to me, they're not being honest or being in integrity. And that is a true core life value for me. When we get triggered, so just notice the first step in becoming emotionally aligned, body, heart, mind, and spirit, is to know what triggers, what are the things that happen, people say things, do things that cause me to get uncomfortable or stirred up inside. So having a baseline, knowing what it is that causes that. So then getting really curious. So like asking myself, okay, what are some of the things that have happened in my life, particularly in my childhood, that caused for me to feel this same way. So going deeper in your curiosity. Once you identify that, you can now become consciously aware in the moment that it's happening. Wait a second. Deep breath. I'm safe. I'm not threatened right now in this moment. It's not happening like when I was a child. For example, my child is sitting in front of me. My child may be lying to me, my child is lying to me. I know it's a lie. Deep breath. I don't want to make it about the child, because if I make it about the child, then I make them wrong. I make them feel wrong. And then I'm now creating something that in their adulthood, they've got to go back and figure out why mom yelled at me in that moment. So it's really about learning to become aware, to be curious, to go deeper. Where did this stem from? What is it that I'm really feeling? Identifying the emotion. Being in that space where I'm grounded in my central nervous system now allows me to consciously, in the frontal cortex of my brain, where is the reason and logic, I can now make a choice of how I would like to respond. But as long as I'm in a heightened amygdala state, or survival is really that base brain. It's that animal instinct. Some people call it the reptilian brain or monkey brain. And when I'm in that space, I cannot make good choices. Guess what? Neither can my child. So that's where co-regulation comes in. And we can talk about that later if you want, because we're just focusing on the parent being regulated in our emotions. So be aware, understand and know what the core emotions are. What are the emotions that I'm feeling? Being curious about what caused it, and now being consciously aware, choosing how I want to respond to whatever's happening in that moment.
Mhm. So,
We
like,
can choose. We can choose, but we got to move to the frontal cortex first.
yeah, absolutely. So many a times parents ask me that if in the heat of the moment my child is lying and I'm not stopping, I'm not catching him and letting him know that he's wrong, he must correct himself in the moment, chances are high that they are going to be a liar for their life. So how
Mm,
can we deal that situation?
It's a great question. First and foremost, if we bring attention to the lie, that is actually the way that we are going to cause them to lie more. It's the most fascinating thing. But when we focus on the child and how we're making them feel in the moment, because what happens, I just got chills again. Like what happens in that moment, if I bring attention to the lie, I am now creating a shame cycle. I'm actually creating a shame that now they are going to withdraw. I'm damaging our relationship. There is not there is not that oxytocin. I was like cortisol. There's a lot of cortisol going on. There's a lot of stress going on. So I'm actually creating shame as a parent. So what I want to focus on, particularly around a lie, is what I will say to the child is, okay, you know what? I actually walk away. I give it a little time out. I don't address it in the moment because the child already knows they're lying. They know it, and they're going to feel worse if we bring attention to it. But I come back to it about an hour or so later, and I come to the child and I say, you know what, honey, when you tell me a story about how things happened that didn't happen exactly like I feel, it makes me feel whatever the emotion is that I'm feeling. I get to be authentic about what it brought up for me, but I don't make it about the lie. I make it about the relationship. Because if we make it about the lie, we bring the shame, we actually create a cycle that will continue. Because if in the moment I address it, I am now creating a fear-based relationship. That child won't lie because they're afraid. of what you're going to do or say.
Mhm.
And so they may or may not lie, right? So they may lie because there's something happening for them. For some kids, it's for survival. So for my daughter, lying was a survival mechanism because when she lied, she was in control. And nothing that you could say or do, I could say or do in that moment was going to be worse than feeling like she was out of control. Because out of control doesn't feel safe, particularly for kids who have struggled with any kind of attachment or abuse of any kind. So, yeah, so we don't want to create that shame. We want them to know that we love them no matter what. And that's what I get to say. So an hour later, I don't bring attention to the lie. They already know they're lying. But an hour or so later, I go to the child and I have a calm conversation with them. And I say, honey, when you said what you said, can even be detailed. This is how I felt. It's an I statement. We're not saying you lied, you told me this, you did that. I felt this way when you told me what you told me. And I want you to know that no matter what, I love you. We stay connected with them because that relationship and that interaction is so much better than bringing attention to the lie or creating that shame in the moment.
Mm. Yeah, I can hear that. I can feel that as well. And
Mhm.
I often say thank you for being honest with me if if they admit to it. Making sure that they are acknowledged that they tell me the truth.
Absolutely. Doing like giving them, my husband and I call it pizzazz. Like we might even do a happy dance, like however, like whatever would serve your child in the moment to acknowledge their honesty, land that with them, like really share with them in a way that they will receive it the best, acknowledging that so that that's what you're creating because whatever we focus on, we create more of. So if I focus on the lie, I'm going to actually create more lying because there's something underneath that for my child and for me. So if I recognize and identify what is the trigger for me, there's a reason that child is not telling the truth. So be curious. I always tell people, especially parents, lead with curiosity.
Mm,
Find out why that child is telling you this story. There's a reason underneath that that will serve you far better to get to that than just calling out the lie.
mm, definitely.
Okay.
That resonated with me so much, and you partially answered my next question. How can families establish a culture of emotional openness and support at home?
Beautiful. Yes. Well, this is where I'll speak into a little bit of co-regulation. So first and foremost, as the adult in the relationship, I get to learn to regulate myself and my own emotions. I am responsible and I get to figure out how to create that. Now, with children, especially small children who are still building on those emotional building blocks, I have a responsibility to teach them. The younger we can teach them, the better, to identify their emotions. So when they're feeling sad, mad, scared, peaceful, powerful, or joyful. Those are the key emotions. And I've actually heard them said a little bit differently. So this is interesting. This is the wheel I have up right now. But there's some key emotions, that we get to support them, even as toddlers, to express themselves verbally, is fantastic. That they can actually say, Mom, I'm really sad. I'm really mad in this moment. So helping them identify emotions at a younger age. For nonverbal children, whether they be too young, there are signs, there's sign language. This is more, that's not really appropriate sign, but there are parents who teach their children sign language before they become verbal. This also works really well with children who are neurodiverse that have a challenging time, like my daughter, to vocalize how they're feeling in the moment. We did cards. We had colored cards. So yellow was, hey, things are going south right now. I'm feeling emotionally charged. So we knew that we got to take some steps to take a timeout, to do a timeout for going outside, going on a walk, using the dry brush, bouncing on the exercise ball, or anything, jumping the mini trampolines are fabulous. So if she couldn't choose to do that on her own, then I would guide her to that. Red card meant I'm about ready to explode. So, like we get to create something different. So, and each child is unique. We're with neurodiversity, there's a lot of different things you can create that will be supportive. The key thing is if we have children who are emotionally challenged, we want to build in those timeouts. Well, parents too, okay? If I'm in the chaos and in the survival mode, I get to generate time for me and my children as a timeout. So deep breathing is an amazing technique. We can teach that to young children. We can do all of the sensory timeouts, movement with our bodies, turn on music and dance for 5 minutes if you dance. But there's so many other tools out there. The dry brush is one of my favorite. Um, just as a sensory thing, they actually offer dry brushing now as part of massage therapy. So it creates circulation and it's amazingly soothing. If you have a child who's tactile, having a little soft piece of fabric that they carry in their pocket is super awesome. So these are all little things, especially for neurodiverse kiddos. But I, as the parent, first get to regulate, and then I get to support my child. Sometimes that means me sitting next to them, but not touching them. Sometimes we're sitting next to each other on the couch, and I'll just have my knee touch, just like an incidental touch. Sometimes I can put my hand on them. Sometimes I can give them a hug. Bear hugs are excellent for creating emotional regulation if they're open to it. If they're fighting against it, you get to choose if that's going to be supportive in the moment. But really building in those time outs for you as a parent and for your children, especially those who are emotionally challenged, will create a different feeling in your home. Also being aware, when is my child a verbal processor? Do they get to go run, play outside to process their energy? Like knowing how my child needs to get their energy out for the day is also super supportive. And then giving them those opportunities. I will tell you, I was a mean parent. My husband Scott and I were mean parents when our children were in elementary school. We made them go play outside for 30 minutes before they could come in and play on the computer. Like, I'm proud of it. So I'm proud to be a mean parent. I say that tongue in cheek because they would say that. You're such a mean mom. You make me go play outside. But to this day, I stand by that we get to create activities and different things for our children that are away from the electronics, that create connection, that create mobile play and movement. That will create a culture in our home. The other thing is doing these things together, making fun activities out of it, where parents and children are doing some of these breaks together, going out and playing, or just laying on the grass, making grass angels instead of snow angels, whatever it is we gardened as a family. And as much as our kids would complain about it, one of the best things you can do with your kiddos to be outside, to pull the weeds, to get your hands in the dirt, doing dishes together as a family instead of it being one child that's responsible for it or always the parent. Do it together. Have assignments in your home that you do things together. Clean the bathroom together. So often we just want to give it to one person and have it be done, or we do it ourselves because they don't do it the right way. But doing those things together creates connection as well.
Okay, so my next question is like a little bit about relationships as you are talking about doing things together. I often hear parents saying that I am enrolled, and how can I enroll my partner into being together, and how can I bring him in my same boat so that we can do it together? As you're a relationship coach, I really want you to focus on this.
Okay, that's a gold question, $1 million question right there. So it's really about finding common ground. So what is it that my spouse or co-parenting partner is willing to do together? Start there. Finding out, hey, you know what, we have these children together or we're raising them together, and I really want to do it together. So what is my spouse willing to do together? So instead of thinking or assuming my husband will not do anything, my partner will not do anything with me because I haven't until this moment done anything, get curious with them and ask, what can we start with? Share with them your vision of what it is that you want to create for the family. And then say, how can we start building this together? And it really is challenging when well, maybe they don't want to. Then that's a whole different conversation, right? But what are they willing to do that's maybe one thing a week or even one outing or something, once a month, and then build on that. So start small, and this goes for kids too. Enrolling your children to do certain things, you got to get their buy-in. You really got to get their buy-in because if you tell them, they're not going to be so excited about it. Hey, mom came up with this really amazing idea today, and this is what we're going to start doing as a family.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
No, even if I'm a master enroller, that does not always work. But really allowing them to contribute to the conversation. What would you like to do? So we just did this on our family vacation. I have 3 adult children and a daughter-in-law. And we gave them, hey, these are the places we're going to stay. Will you do some research and look and see what you would like to do while we're there? So really allowing the buy-in is critical. And then working towards, you have a common goal. So figure out with your spouse or your partner, what is our common goal? If we want to raise children who are contributing members to society, what does that look like? When the outcome, look at the outcome together and what does that look like? And then take the baby steps, and then you can take bigger steps and bigger steps to create that together. Because you decided to be in it together for a reason. Sometimes it's going back to that and deciding, not deciding, you do get to decide and make choices, but like going back to the beginning of why you chose to get married or to be in a relationship, why you chose to have children and be intimate with one another in a conversation about that, going back to why you chose to be in it to begin with.
Thank you for
No
sharing.
shame or blame or fault or guilt, because that will not work. Well, honey, you said this, and that's why it's really about creating that loving buy-in space.
But most of the time, when we are in our, not in our calm self, we often end up doing that, like blaming and putting it out, seeing things what's wrong and not focusing on what's working.
I call that the most important time to give yourself a timeout.
Mm.
Never, ever, ever have a conversation with a child, a spouse, a loved one, a neighbor, whoever, coworker, when you are in an emotionally heightened state. It is a lose-lose. You want to create a win-win in the relationship. So as a mom, if I do have an emotionally heightened state because something triggered in me and I'm maybe tired or hungry or, for our kids too, hungry, halt. Hungry, angry, tired, or feeling lonely. I didn't spell that right, but you know what I mean. Whenever we're in that heightened emotional state, it is not going to serve me or anyone else to have any conversation. So I actually give myself a timeout. So if I'm starting to get heightened or my child is getting heightened or my spouse, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to call a timeout right now. And let's just, let's come back to this when we're ready to have the conversation. The same thing is applicable for when I'm asking my child to do something and they're not willing to do it and the power struggle begins. Pause, hit a timeout, and actually call it that. You can establish as a family what it is that you want to call it. We called it timeouts. We also did a lot of redos and do-overs in our home. That means if I didn't handle the situation like I really wish I would have, I'll give myself a little timeout and then I'll come back to my child and I'll acknowledge my breakdown in the communication and then say, hey, can I have a do-over? And then I'll actually speak to them in a calm manner. And then we hug it out and, create that connection. So even when we do have that heightened emotional state that happens, sometimes we can still mend and repair it and do over.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this, Dawneese. I would like to add also when enrolling others into our own vision, asking and being curious what is their vision to create connection in the family, or the next step. What is their vision for our family, about our vacation, about our time together. It's super powerful to create that. And the timeout, I definitely get to um, uh, I get to copy. I get to use timeouts definitely, because it's the next step, isn't it? It's the next step of creating that connection, knowing that you are not ready to have that heart-to-heart conversation yourself. So how can you create that connection with somebody else, with your loved ones? Beautiful. And so as we conclude this interview, this powerful interview, I wanted to ask you, Dawneese, about your amazing gift for our audience.
Yes. Well, I don't offer calls very much anymore on these summits, but for you ladies, I wanted to create this for those who are watching, and that is I've created a link for scheduling a call with me. It's a 30-minute, as I call, Save Your Sanity strategy call, because I really am committed to supporting parents to create the harmony, to go from the chaos to the calm, or the surviving to thriving. And it really is about having at least one strategy that you can begin to implement right away. So I'm offering a 30-minute call for people to sign up for, who, when you walk away from that call, you'll have at least one strategy that you can walk away from that call with to implement right away. So take advantage of it.
Yes, our audience get to take advantage of this, definitely, because we all want to thrive.
Yeah.
Thank
Go
you.
grab it.
Thank you
Yes,
so
thank
much,
you.
Dawneese.
My
Really
pleasure.
appreciate your presence and your generosity of your time and knowledge, your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank
But
you.
thank you
Wonderful to
so
be here.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.